Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? Hope y'all doing all right. Um, I read this article from CNSnews.com about Ben Shapiro. I am a big Ben Shapiro fan. Uh, as some of us like to call him, the Hebrew Hammer. Ben Shapiro's pretty cool guy. Very intelligent. Uses actual data. Places a big emphasis on context. Um, uh, to prove a point. Uh, a debating beast. People who who debate Ben Shapiro often get bodied. Just murdered. And this is really because he's on point. Like he's just on point. Ben don't mess around. But in this article, I saw this earlier. I found this to be a really interesting article, and very relevant to the push for socialism. So in this article, it says socialism violates 3 of the 10 commandments. That's a big claim. As a Christian myself, who places a big emphasis on the 10 Commandments, I think you can definitely make a correlation between some socialist ideas and the breaking of some of the 10 Commandments for sure. Like I've memorized the 10 Commandments. The first commandment is, you should have no other gods before me, right? Second commandment, you should not worship any graven images, which is essentially idolatry. Don't be idolatrous. Third commandment says you shall not use God's name in vain. The fourth commandment says you shall honor the Sabbath, keep it holy. I don't think that's in any way applicable to socialism. If you think so, otherwise, let me know in the comments below. Fifth commandment says you shall honor your father and your mother. Sixth commandment says you shall not murder. There's a big difference between killing and murder. Murder implies innocence. Do not take innocent life. Seventh commandment says you shall not commit adultery. I don't think that applies in the context of socialism. The eighth commandment says you shall not steal. That's definitely going to apply. I can tell you that right now. The ninth commandment says let's see, ninth commandment, you shall not lie. You shall not lie. Don't lie. And the 10th commandment says you shall not covet. That absolutely applies to socialism. By the way, if you like these videos, consider becoming a patron or showing some support via PayPal. Either one helps. But seriously, I don't desire things that are not mine. It's not my place. I don't want some guy's nice car. I don't want some guy's nice house. That covetousness often leads to theft, right? People steal stuff because they want it, but it's not yours. So yeah, that definitely applies here. I'm going to read through this really quickly. So let's go. CNSnews.com. Socialism, a left-wing ideology that calls for government ownership and control of the economy and civil society, violates at least 3 of the 10 Commandments, said nationally syndicated columnist, New York Times bestselling author, and syndicated talk radio host Ben Shapiro at the Young America's Foundation's National Conservative Student Conference on Thursday in Washington, D.C. I put my voice acting training to work here. Socialism violates 3 of the 10 Commandments, Shapiro told the crowd of mostly young activists and students. Idolatry, because you're not supposed to worship government. You're supposed to worship God. Ooh. So that's a second commandment, Boy, it's a really interesting way to put it. It's a really interesting way to put it. Not everybody is a Christian. Not everybody's religious. Some folks are atheists. Um, some folks would consider themselves more agnostic. You know what I mean? But when it comes to the 10 Commandments, I think I can see a correlation between idolatry and socialism. To say that socialists worship government, I don't think is really that far of a reach at all, honestly. Socialists push really hard to make government do everything. Like they push hard, man. And you have to understand that uh, that socialists want to use the government to basically take stuff. Like that's nuts. Like think about that. They want to use the government basically as a hammer, to stamp out uh, people who have a lot of money. Or they want to use the government to take money from basically everyone. Using the government like as your daddy, or your provision. You know what I mean? Like that that overlord. As that overlord, I definitely can see that correlation. Not to say that socialists worship government as if it's some supreme being, but rather putting so much emphasis into using it. Saying, "Oh, the government, we need the government, we need the government, big government, big government." I can definitely see that correlation. So that's the second commandment, broken in a way. Continuing. It violates the prescription against theft because socialism is indeed theft, even if you vote for the theft, he said. Dude, that's a really good point. It's a really good point. It's a really, really, really good point. So remember, the eighth commandment says, "You shall not steal." You know, you shall not steal. Do not take what is not yours. Uh, and so a lot of socialists say, "Yo, everybody needs to pitch in." These companies, these big companies that have all this money, or these people that are super rich, they need to give some money. They can afford it. Like it's the same mindset. Oh, they can afford it. They can give it up. Trust me, they can give it up. Well, whether they can or not is irrelevant. It's their stuff. It's their property. And it's also relative, really, to people who have and have not. A lot of socialists are, particularly in America, a lot of socialists, like they use iPhones, they have smartphones, they have clothing on, they can go sit down at Starbucks and enjoy some expensive coffee and stuff like that. For every person in America who lives like that, there are 10,000 people around the world who don't. And so from those other people who don't have that privilege, they can say, "Hey, you can afford a coffee, so give me that coffee." You know what I mean? Like it's really relative to people who have and people who don't have. Even if they don't have much and really don't want much. It's just like saying, "Give me your coffee, you can buy another one." Like it's still theft. Like sure, someone's worth $1 billion. It doesn't mean that you can take, half of their money. It doesn't mean that you can take 20% of their money. It's still theft. So using the government to do that is wicked. Like it's wrong. There are a lot of people who say taxation is theft. You know, um, and so especially for people who feel that way, that bluntly about it, man. Of course, socialism is a bad idea. It's awful, and there are other reasons too. But I would argue, just like Ben here, the dude, it's evil. Like you cannot involuntarily relieve me of my things. That's wrong, you know. And then a lot of people will be like, "Oh, but don't you care for people in need? Don't you care? Oh, you're so selfish, so selfish." But no, that's not true at all. I do help people in need. I'm not going to sit here and justify myself by talking about the people I do help, the homeless people I give money to, the people that I use my resources on. Like I'm not going to just sit here and justify that. The point is, I can help who I want to help. You don't get to force me to help anybody. Um, I I enjoy my freedom, and you do too. Like I I guarantee you that I guarantee you that any socialist who is like super staunch about this, like, "Oh, but the people need this, the people need that." If someone just ran up and stole their smartphone, they'd be like, "What the heck, bro?" Like, "Give me my smartphone back. Just give it back." And even if the thief turns around and says, "Well, oh, you can afford another phone. I'm going to take this anyway." That socialist still wouldn't go for it. Like it's a somewhat silly way to go about it, but it's nevertheless true. It's nevertheless true. If you don't want anyone to steal for you, from you, rather, then you shouldn't try to make the government do it for you. It's a way to basically make theft legal. Um, Continuing, let's finish this. Quote, and it violates the prescription against jealousy. You're not supposed to envy your neighbor. You're not supposed to covet your neighbor's property, said Shapiro. That's what socialism is about. 100%. Absolutely. The 10th Commandment says, you shall not covet. You shall not covet. And if any of you understand the difference between theft and covetousness, theft begins with being a covetous person. You know, anyone that that steals a car, you know, that steals someone's phone, that steals anything, steals your package, you know, when it's delivered, they stole it because they firstly wanted it, you know. And so yeah, there's definitely breaking the 10th Commandment as well. Moving on. Recently, people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders have been able to excite the Democrats and the left, Shapiro said. They claim to be democratic socialists, but there is no difference between them and socialists. Socialism seeks to destroy the system of action and consequence, Shapiro said. That's a profound thing to say. Socialism seeks to destroy the system of action and consequences. Man, that's really, really fascinating thing to say. Finishing, self-proclaimed democratic socialists look to countries such as Denmark and Canada to prove that socialism works, however. These countries just have socialist policies but are not socialists, Shapiro said. According to the Heritage Foundation's Economic Freedom Scale, the United States ranks 18, while countries such as Denmark, Switzerland, and Sweden rank higher. Sanders often points out how well Denmark's socialist economy works. Socialist, quote unquote. But he has a few things wrong, Shapiro said. Even the Prime Minister of Denmark started objecting to this, he said. In 2015, Bernie Sanders was going around talking about how Denmark is just the best place ever. I could hear that in Ben Shapiro's voice. He cracks me up, man. Ben Shapiro cracks me up. Let's see. And the Danish Prime Minister went to Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and he said, I know that some people in the U.S. associated the Nordic model with some sort of socialism. Therefore, I would like to make one thing clear. Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy. Wow. So if Denmark's prime minister is like, yo, this ain't exactly socialist, so stop referencing us. I should tell you something. All right. When comparing other countries with the United States on economic policies, those who believe in socialism should be aware of the differences in the culture and size of the economies, said Shapiro. Dude, that's a huge point. That's such an interesting and important point. You know, I hear this a lot. Because, well, these other countries are socialists and they're doing great. Well, you know what? There's a lot that's not being said about that. You know, like some countries don't really have the capability to even to defend themselves. You know, some countries actually rely on America to defend them, and those countries offer, you know, make an agreement and all that stuff. You know, there's also the issue of the cultures themselves. You know, like a lot of that stuff, it matters. Like it really, really does matter. Context really matters. So yeah, I completely agree. Finishing this up, things such as culture and population are very different in the U.S. than those in socialist countries. In addition, people that are considered poor in America are not considered poor in other places around the world, he said. That is super true. Dude, that is super true. Man, capitalism has done so much for this country. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. No system is. But boy, this is the best system, hands down. Dude, the average Joe right now lives 10 times better than a person did, you know, a century ago. You know, like, man, 100 years ago, you couldn't exactly enjoy, you know, Italian food, you know, Mexican food, Greek food, you know, all in a day's time, you know, and that's just like food, you know what I mean? Like, as you know, you can get some pizza from a gas station now, you know, like gas stations are competing with one another, offering all these rewards and stuff and these conveniences, you know, and that's just the place where you go to fill up your car. And that's just one aspect, you know, like we have so much convenience, our cell phones, for example, you know, we literally have information of the world at our fingertips. Literally, you can look up practically anything on your phone, provided you have the interest to do so, and provided that you have the the ability to concentrate, because everything's fighting for your attention these days. Like me, keep it real here. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe, and consider please helping me on Patreon or PayPal, because yeah. Keeping it real though, but anyway, we're doing so much better, like so much better. It's nuts. It's nuts. It drives me crazy to no end how people complain about how awful corporations are, how they're hideous, while they talk about stuff on their $1,000 iPhone. Um, it blows my mind. Like, it really, really blows my mind. But yeah, dude, America is a shining example of what is possible, and other countries too. Other countries too. I have a Samsung phone, and that's from South Korea. Finishing this up, I keep saying that at some point or another, people feel that their situation is unfair. Wealth is not created by socialism. Suffering is created by socialism, Shapiro said. Man, he's right. He's right. He's absolutely right. If you guys like this video, you know what to do. If you disliked it, you know what to do. Let me know what you guys think about Ben Shapiro in the comments below. This article as well. See you guys later.